Okay, then Andrea, I leave the floor to you to talk about the experience from our pilot testing. I suggest you say next every time you want the next slide. Is that okay?
Yes, okay, thank you, Philip. So we did a survey among students, and of course we did some interviews with lecturers. With the first pilot series of cases, we actually surveyed the students immediately after the use of cases, and we have the results from 3 partner universities, from Slovenia, from Poland, and from Leeds. So NUCAT as well tested her cases, and this study was collected from September to May 2020. So UK was tested in January 2020. Poland actually has many classrooms and many different groups from November to April 2020. And in Slovenia, as I said, I did these cases in April and May, and May was the testing survey. And also there was some cases done by Filip. Filip will add perhaps his view because he tested the pilot cases very recently. So we were interested how the students saw the cases, and of course we discussed the challenges and their experience. We had a set of closed questions. They were that was a scale from 1 to 5. So how strongly they agree or disagree with a statement. And then, of course, we have a set of open questions where students were able to add what they like, what they dislike, what would they propose. So next, please. So I'll go quickly through this set of questions, and as you can see, basically the results are pretty good. So they quite agree with this statement. So they find teaching material in video cases better than classical cases. They prefer video to paper-based teaching material. They even mostly see that they easier understand cases than video cases than written cases. The large score is with authenticity. They are more authentic, they are more motivating for that. And then but it's interesting with the results with the structure. So sometimes they are very used to written cases, so here the general score is a little bit lower with regard to the structure, right? So they don't really always see these cases more structured than written cases, and but then again they see them more interesting teaching material. They're more motivated to study with those. Next, please. So what was interesting was actually that these cases, at least in Slovenia and UK, they help them to implement the theories on the real life situation better. They also find beneficial because with this kind of cases, it's easy that you stop the case, discuss the problem, and then proceed. So that they found beneficial. This is also something which was planned in advance, right? How to structure the case and stop and discuss. That's also well evaluated. Also, the length of video cases for the class purpose. Then the quality, which was also seen as satisfactory. And they also evaluate that they find learning theory with video cases easier than with traditional teaching methods. So in general, they find a learning process more attractive with video cases compared to the traditional teaching methods. Next. So the last session of questions actually was more related to discussion and interaction. And here it's not always easy to start the interaction. So, but the results here actually was very diverse. some of students, so the variation was larger compared to other questions. So the contribution to class discussion, generally it's still above average, but as I said, the discussion has to be led by the lecturer. So teaching is extremely important. Video per se will not help you, and to just do the discussion. Then I listen to the lecture with more attention if the lecture is covered by video case. Again, it's the diverse results, because in Slovenia here I see, I have to say, and during the same semester, as I said, I tested the invitation of managers via Zoom, but also the case studies, and of course invitation via Zoom. For example, my students were telling me, oh yes, these video cases are fine, but of course if you have a manager live in Zoom session, that's even better, right? So here in particular with this question was that that issue, but UK and Poland, as I said, as you can see, the attention is greater, but they all agree, students mostly agree, that video cases are more fun. They like to watch them. And what it was important finding that they stick in mind for a longer period compared to the written material or compared to written cases. And I must say, we refer to those situations from the video through the whole semester, because if you discuss, for example, the case of internationalization or early entrepreneur that has a number of problems at the beginning, so once you are back into deeper, when you go deeper with some certain issue at later stage with lectures, your students refer to this initial problem, and actually if the story is convincing, it stays in their mind and they relate the problems to these situations. And overall, yes, they find more interesting. So then we asked the students what did they like the most and what the least. So here is the selection of answers. Well, here is the list of answers that we get from students from 3 different universities and from different courses. So what do they like? Actually, the decision that we went for local companies, perhaps less famous companies, was well accepted. Students preferred that they have got the sneak peek into companies that they perhaps know from the local, but from the other hand, that was also an encouragement that they were able, that even people, companies or entrepreneurs from local environment can grow into multinational companies. I think that was a strong incentive for learning. What do they like is actually that they get expert view, the really that they can see the manager, the passion, the emotion, the first-hand view. The topic was presented in clear, structured way, so for them it was easy to learn. And they also like the cases were mostly up to date, so they were talking about the problems that are going on recently or at the moment, and they find this more interesting. What was also interesting, that in Poland that answer came out that actually they liked, because if they listened to the case but this was done in classroom in synchron as a complementary way, they like that the whole group of students continue with learning at the same pace, right? So the speed was more equal, because with the reading cases, if you do the work group, you know that some students are really fast and other more slower. So that was also one thing, but also what they pointed out was visualization. So I've tested this during pandemic already. So I got the comments that actually they like this TikTok learning. It's easier if you get the video case to go through for homework before we start the lecture. That was fun for them. They like that. And that they also liked, because we had the case of young entrepreneur, and they somehow feel like him, and they have it was motivating for them to hear his story, his problem, his approach. Next. What do they dislike? So what is clear, it's not easy to listen. So they like videos, but they are not always, it's not always easy to listen. But these video cases, as you know, have lots of information and important information that you have to remember. So sometimes it's not easy to listen. Sometimes they lack interaction during the video cases. So it's very important, how do you deliver the case and how much do you spend for interaction with students. Also, of course, as I tested this during the pandemic in Slovenia, the comment was that they already spent too much time on screen, and they prefer reading to a certain extent at that time. So but and also that preference for managers was noticed. But in general, we also collect these ideas from students before we start testing our pilot cases. And what they like in general with video cases is that actually cases bring real life experience and realistic examples into classroom. They are different, so they're less used, and for them this is a new method, or at least additional method which makes the lecture more diverse and motivating. They like because the cases are linked to theory, so it's not that they have to spend time and and search what kind of theory is here behind, but it's linked. The teacher helps them, and it's very easy to connect because they are designed in this way. Also, they are clear and easy to understand, and visualization and the seeing the managers help them to see the stimulates them to learn further, right? And also what they appreciate is up-to-date content and possibility to rewatch. With the dislikes, they actually are very sensitive to quality and length. These two issues are, I think, critical. So if the video is too long, this might be annoying, or they need to, the teacher somehow has to um, intervene in that sense in the classroom. They are sensitive if the voice is not okay, if the movie is not okay, if the quality of sound or the photo is not okay. And also they are a little bit sensitive to narratives, to relevance. So if the video is not focused or clear, this is also not good. But that, as I said, these results were collected before the pilot cases were done. So to sum up the experience, before we sum up, I would also give a lecturer's perspective, yes. So with the lectures, we do interviews and focus group, but few of them who used our cases, and we got the selection of teachers who used the cases, and actually we discussed with them, and of course we discussed among ourselves. I can also, yeah, the results about the video use were from the surveys, and the lecturers actually are pointing out that they like these cases because they are authentic, convincing, they are motivating, so they add value to the lectures, they accelerate discussion. So mostly lecturers who deliberately went for video cases use them properly, and they use them for accelerated discussion. And what they also pointed out is that the material, the topic, and the lecture stays in mind longer than compared to written cases. But what was cons was actually that was mentioned. So time to find, time to that was mentioned by Hans, that actually it's hard to find cases. It's great if you get one, but otherwise they would like to use them more, but it's difficult to get them. So that was something that was cons for them, because you cannot use them normally for the whole semester, which they would like. So we hope that this library will help to this. But also they pointed out that for the interaction, they have to learn how to use it, and actually they have to develop skill to to motivate students to interact and to speak out after videos. So that was an issue for a lecturer. And what also said that because the ones they use, they stop and discuss, and it was the first time use. And what they mentioned was that it's sometimes difficult to predict the discussion because students notice in videos more information than perhaps it was planned by a lecturer. That was also my experience. So suddenly students may start to discuss about managerial characteristic, about his passion or her passion, or about the company facilities that they see in the picture, in the video. So sometimes discussions may go into unplanned ways, but that might also happen with written cases, as you know. So time management is important. Next. So the main challenges with video cases, I would say, as we gather all information, is actually the trade-offs or dilemmas, which are the first is the length versus information. So if you want to put the all information, of course, it's quite challenging. And as Nugent and Filip mentioned before, it's not always easy to find a compromise. They have to be short enough to be motivating, but still you have to include all necessary information. So that's why we combine sometimes additional information within video and also with teaching note, and also a dilemma how much to put within video and how much within a teaching note. So certainly if you want to solve the cases and the problems in greater detail with numbers, with projections, with plans, then the teaching note is of course very important. And from time to time, from certain tasks or problems, extra written material from teaching note is needed. And that's why the production of teaching note is very important. Then the structure. You've seen that actually here, the dilemma is actually whether you structure and put theoretical frameworks and notes very clearly in advance, or you put the students in front of the question and they have to discover by themselves, well, what do you see, which pattern do you see, what kind of decision making process do you see perhaps. So here again, from the design point of view, from the production point of view, it's the dilemma how much to structure and you find the balance between the structure, very clear structure, and perhaps some room for their own discovery. Next dilemma relates to the updates. So many of the cases that we use are born globals, very quickly, dynamic. They develop very quickly and dynamically. So there are many changes within a year or two, and many of them use even social media and other channels. So it's really nice if you combine or complement these cases with social media material or other material that is available and that helps them and motivates them to do case further. And then it's important that actually cases are used across different universities. So as they are taken from local countries, from local environment, although these companies are more or less multinational companies nowadays, actually sometimes the views may not be seen as universal. So I think we have discussed and a lot, and it's very useful that video cases, if you produce them, are tested in different universities to see whether how much additional information you need to add within teaching note. Because for if you have a case from Poland, this is very perhaps clear for Poland. They know home environment, etc. But if you use the same case in other country, maybe the students will not be aware of home country business environment and other incentives and other determinants that are crucial for understanding the development or growth of multinational companies. So for that purpose, using the cases and testing stage in different universities is very important to make good teaching notes. Right, next. So just to sum up, actually, what we have learned, the process of case development is challenging, right? Although the new generation is keen on videos and they accept videos very well, it's not very, the process of case development is not straightforward and easy and without problems. So from the design point of view, there are quite many challenges, but we still find that this kind of teaching material will probably substitute or at least complement traditional video cases. So we are pretty sure with this pilot stage that it's worth to invest all this effort into video cases, and that's why I think it's worth that we exchange experience and encourage each other to use this. And on the top of that, when we go around companies and we speak with managers and multinationals, we all have seen that they actually, even within multinationals themselves, they use video cases nowadays for learning and for internal knowledge development. So that, I think, it's everything. Philip?
Yes. Okay. Let me perhaps add a little bit my own perspective. So I used one of my video cases in executive teaching. It was face-to-face, but with executives or students, if you like, that were not into IB. So none of them were actually international managers. So I can corroborate many of the items that Andreja already mentioned. So they appreciate the real life story. They can relate to what they see much better. Perhaps they can also apply some of the decisions that these managers took in their eventual drive of internationalization. But they lacked, if I may, the theoretical baggage. So they had not had any IB course. So I was teaching in IB a half day without them having any background except for Leo's half day of entry or of lecturing before I did my video case. So they had some, but it was on the same day. So that was not easy. So it's true, you have to strongly relate the theory to the case, which I think is an issue with any case. I also have this with written cases. You know, students often cannot really give a very in-depth answer, I find, which is theory or empiric results based. So it's not any different, I think, with video cases, and you need to take charge of this process. I'm not sure if anybody else has any experiences or stories to tell or feedback to give. If not, yes, Suzanne?
No, I just want to say that thank you very much. I think it was extremely interesting to see the results from the students, and because I think that this could really be helpful in the future. It's helpful already now, but for sure in the future as well. So it was really interesting. Thank you very much to see both the pros and cons, because there's always challenges. I did have a minor question, because it said that it covered, was it Slovenia, Slovakia, and
Slovenia,
Poland, and then Belgium, but then it said UK.
UK, yes, University of Leeds. So there are some UK-based companies, but also I think one of the companies is American, I think. I have a small Belgian one. I have a very international one. It's Belgium, but nobody knows it's a Belgian one. So Kipling, which is a very international brand. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of it. It's the bag manufacturing. It's more for girls and ladies. They're very strong in China, for instance. One of the major market that they have, I think, is China. Of course, digital business. So we have big countries, small countries, big companies, small companies. So it's a little bit of different context, backgrounds, industries, types of decisions that they had to make. Is it about, like Andreja said, international entrepreneurship? Is it more about acquisitions, which are, you know, it's already fast forward to a more advanced multinational, about entry modes, about location decisions, about cultural management. So lots and lots of topics which you can find in existing textbooks, but perhaps also some new things about you know, how to manage ethics and stuff like that. So we try to at least bring in some of the survey results we got. So some of the things we also feel are missing, because as you know, I am always very disappointed by existing textbooks. So they all look the same and all the same topics. So it changes slowly. So I hope through video cases that we can improve a little bit the content and the real life situation to something which is a little bit more current. Yes, Leo.
Okay, so my experience is that it's very important to give the context also of the case. So first introduce what's the company about, so also about the speakers, so that the students know how they have to understand these different views. So I think if you have introduced too many things and too many different people in a case, it's quite unstructured for the students.
Yeah. We'll give an example. I will use the first section of my video case in one of the next sessions or sections. But it's true, you should not assume that the video case will run itself. You are still very much important as a lecturer, and you need to be the intermediate between the company and the student. So you need to indeed bring context. Also bring light to some of the discussion, because otherwise, you know, it like Andreja says, it can go array if you're not careful. Yes, Suzanne.
So, I mean, I had a thinking because it seems like they really appreciated when they view the video case together, so that they can stop and discuss along the way and so on. But I maybe would have thought, like for my master students, that they would have had the video available to review and see it beforehand. And then we meet at a workshop where I gave them questions that they can work with, and then they kind of give me the analysis.
Yes.
So I do the examination during the seminar.
Yeah. So in the last section, we will talk about how to teach, and we are focusing on face-to-face, online, and hybrids, and synchronous and asynchronous, right? So all these options are available. I'm sorry, we cannot tackle all of the situations. We will only tackle one or two. But as you indicate, asynchronous is possible, where you get, you know, for instance, you supply them with 2 sections of the video case, which they can already prepare and discuss and prepare something to present in class, for instance. And you can still follow up with other sections in class afterwards, or have them do the entire video case beforehand. So anything is possible, asynchronous and synchronous. But we'll come back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Yes, Andreja.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Suzanne, because that's really useful. If you gave the students complex problems, or like you asked before, if you gave them a project to conclude by their own, then this preview is very helpful. It speeds up the problem solving, to my experience, because they pay attention. Sometimes from the first few, they don't catch everything. The students actually do not listen so carefully as we planned that they will.
True.
I don't understand is how broad or how narrow do you recommend to do the cases? Because, you know, obviously if we present the company, you know, they have everything from configuration, coordination, and so on, and acquisitions. On the other hand, you know, I normally use something like this only at the very beginning of the lecture to show, hey, those are the 20 topics that we're going to cover, or you can do it at the end. In between, you know, it's probably good to only look really into a slice, you know, one location decision or something like this, which I assume is a little bit difficult, because after 20-minute introduction to the company, and then they say, and now we focus on this one thing. Or how broad are your cases? How narrow are they?
So the cases are focused, although they do tackle a few related topics, but they are not covering everything in one case. So I will give an example of one of my video cases, which is a small manufacturing a technological company in the sanitary ware business. So not the type of sector which you would typically choose, but still. And it's about how you, for instance, organize production and how you would internationalize the technology that you developed. So those are two typical questions which I would relate to the first section. I'll show you in a minute and perhaps try to get you to answer it, given your experience of many years in IB. And so they are not, because initially, for instance, I had a very long case with multiple questions and topics, and I got some feedback by other lecturers that it was actually too much to handle. So that was impossible for them to do. So I tried to split that up in different sections. But the cases do treat a little bit of differences, so you can actually focus on one aspect if you like. You don't have to treat everything in that case. So the keywords allow for you to pick and choose and focus on what it is that you want. Yes, Jaklic.
Yeah, I think this video, they can have a side benefit. In my country, students, they don't dream of working for SME, for an SME. They dream to join a big company, you know, luxury company or a startup. This is so cool for them. Sorry, perhaps you don't. Can you hear me, Til?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think it could give them a better insight of how real life is in, you know, 300 people company, you know, and how challenging and interesting and stimulating it can be to work
Yes.
in such a company and join a team.
That's excellent. That's actually how I started this workshop in the beginning. I gave some insight into our video case library development and the fact that we have not chosen for you know, these world-class names, given that 99% of students do not end up in Google and Facebook and you know, luxury bag producer. So, you know, it's something a little bit confronting in the beginning because they all dream of being perhaps, big time in big companies, but that's not how life is, especially not, if I may, for my students. Perhaps some of you teach at more fancy institutes, but my students are not really going to big names mostly. Yeah. If that's all for now, I suggest we continue, given that I see it's already 10 past 10, and we still need some ground to cover. Okay. So I move back. Share. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop sharing because I have to indicate share computer sound. Okay, sorry.